We hope that you have been having a wonderful, engaging, and informative time while you're here. Those of you that were with us for the prayer breakfast, we got some good, inspiring, spiritual and energy to vibe off of for the rest of the day, moving on into this evening. I bring you greetings from our President and CEO, Dr. Elsie Scott. She is, as you know, running from session to session with remarks, so she may join us. But if she's not, I bring you greetings from her. Also, Mayor Landrieu from New Orleans is supposed to be with us, but unfortunately, due to plane conflicts with the plane schedule, he's unable to make it in time. So he definitely wanted to be here, and as well as Marian Wright Edelman, which hopefully she will join us. But if not, no worries, because we have a distinguished panel before you on a very important topic, addressing youth violence. So I want to get started by introducing to you our moderator, who will then introduce the panelists. So we have with us Keith Alexander from the Washington Post. He's a crime and courts reporter with a long history of covering not only crime issues, but other issues during his long tenure with the Post. He's been on Anderson Cooper, CNN, MSNBC. He's been a former business columnist and has aggressively been tackling this issue. So we are delighted to have him with us today. I should also mention this is one of the more recent panels that were added, primarily because of the great work that not only Congressman Scott has been engaged in, but Mayor Nutter and Mayor Hancock with their work that they're doing in their city. So we wanted to make sure we had a discussion where we could have sort of the federal level input by Congressman Scott matched by those at our elected officials on the local level who are tackling this issue. And so without further ado, I want to introduce, and I see Dr. Scott here with us, our President and CEO, who's been really wonderful in helping us put some of the critical issues that our communities face. And here comes Marian Wright Edelman from the Children's Defense Fund. So we are in the house and ready to go. So without further ado, please welcome our moderator for this morning, Mr. Keith Alexander from the Washington Post.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning. We do thank you for your interest. So, he just wanted to prove a point. 16-year-old student at a high school not too far from here on Wednesday wanted to prove a point. He stashed a .380 handgun in an alley between his school and home. Has been doing so since school started this year. He wanted to prove a point. This past Wednesday, after an argument with one of his classmates, this 16-year-old youth, on the way home from school, went into that alley and got that .380 handgun and chased down and shot his classmate 4 times as the classmate was running in between other students. Fortunately, the 18-year-old student survived. But the 16-year-old youth wanted to make a point. That's what he told detectives. That's what he said in front of a judge on Thursday, just two days ago, as he stood before the judge, handcuffed and shackles, saying that he wanted to prove a point. Our young people in this city and across the country have access to guns, and for a variety of reasons, like this one just this week, a few blocks away from here, wanted to prove a point. So hopefully this morning we can discuss some issues to address this horrific situation that's going on, that's plaguing our country like a disease. We have assembled some of the most brightest minds to talk about this, and some of you have gathered as well to address this issue and hopefully walk away from this morning session with some tools that we can take back to our individual communities so that maybe we can save a life and avoid this happening to our young people back home. I am Keith Alexander of the Washington Post. Thank you for being here. Let me introduce, first of all, our panelists who will be discussing these ideas and discussing this topic. First of all, we have, obviously not a stranger to us, Congressman Robert Bobby Scott, who is serving his 10th term in Congress, representing the 3rd Congressional District of Virginia. Congressman Scott currently sits on the Judicial Committee and the ranking Democrat on Crime Subcommittee, as well as he sits on the House Education Committee in Congress. Congressman Scott. And we've heard the expression, the next guest needs no introduction. Indeed, it applies to our next panelist, Ms. Marian Wright Edelman. Marian Wright Edelman is the founder and president of the Children's Defense Fund and has been a passionate advocate for disadvantaged Americans for her entire life. Under her leadership, the CDF has become the nation's strongest voice for children and families. The Children's Defense Fund, Leave No Child Behind's mission is to ensure that every child has a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and a moral start in life. A successful passage to adulthood with the help of caring families and communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Marian Wright Edelman. Mayor Michael Hancock. Mayor Michael Hancock is a native of let me see here, I just got the bios completed with me. Yes, of Denver. Before becoming mayor, Mayor Hancock served 8 years as city councilman, 2 years as Denver City Council president, and was the youngest CEO of an urban league chapter anywhere in the country. During his first year in office, Mayor Hancock has begun to set a foundation critical to maintaining the city's momentum and delivering long-term success. Throughout his first year, Mayor Hancock has refocused Denver's efforts around several key initiatives, including delivering more opportunities for all of Denver's children, spurring new economic opportunities for the city, making Denver's streets safer, strengthening the safety net, transforming city government to provide the highest quality service at the lowest possible cost, and champion innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Michael Hancock. Maurita J. Bryant. Assistant Chief of Police in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Maurita J. Bryant is a 35-year veteran of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police and has served as a supervisor capacity for over 18 years. As a native of Pittsburgh, I can tell you, as an African-American and as a woman, that is a major achievement. 35-year veteran of the Pittsburgh Police Force. As serving as a variety of capacities from patrol to criminal investigations and rising through the supervisory ranks, Chief Bryant currently oversees the operations branch of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police, which includes all uniform and police personnel assigned within the 6 police zones and Special Deployment Division. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Bryant. Recently re-elected to his 2nd term as mayor of his hometown, Michael Nutter has set an aggressive agenda for America's 5th largest city, devising the city's innovative school reform strategy, vowing to strengthen community policy throughout Philadelphia Rising, a unique partnership between the vulnerable neighborhoods and the city, and continuing to implement the nationally recognized GreenWorks Philadelphia initiative that helps make the city of Philadelphia become the greenest city of America. Mayor Netter took office in 2008 and has vigorously managed city government throughout the worst recession since the Great Depression by maintaining core services and reducing the city's spending, most notably closing a $2.4 billion gap in Philadelphia's 5-year plan without compromising a single police officer, firefighter, sanitation, or health center worker. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Michael Hancock. Congressman Scott, youth violence in America. What I would like to do is start with you and go down the line. And during some brief opening remarks, if you could talk a little bit about what you have seen and what, during your committee, during your tenure, you've done to address this issue.
Pleasure to address the important issue of addressing youth violence in America. But actually, the fact is, we know what to do. It's just a matter of doing it. I've been an elected official since 1977 when I was elected to the State House of Delegates in Virginia. And all through that time, it's become apparent to me that although we know what to do about youth violence, we have a choice. We can reduce youth violence or we can play politics. Unfortunately, we play politics. Codifying a bunch of slogans and sound bites, mandatory minimum sentences, abolish parole, 3 strikes and you're out. If you get it to rhyme, if you do the adult crime, you do the adult time. All of those slogans and sound bites have been studied. None of them do anything to reduce crime, but they do load up the prisons and get people who are otherwise could have been on a trajectory to being constructive, contributing members of society, end up in jail. The system is so bad that they've got a lot of names to it, like Rail to Jail, or School to Prison, or as the children's defense one, Cradle to Prison Pipeline. We know that we can, how this happens. You just codify all those sound bites, and one thing that it's gotten us is #1 incarcerated in the world. And some of you may have seen this chart already this week. This is the incarceration rate in most of the countries that you can name, 50 to 200 per 100,000, a couple a little higher than that, only 1 over 500, that's Russia. That's critical because the Pew Research Center says anything over 350 per 100,000, you start getting diminishing returns. Over 500, you're locking up so many people and wasting so much money, messing up so many families, and having so many felons in the area that can't vote, can't get discriminated against on education, housing, professional licenses, and everything else, that it is actually counterproductive. You're adding to crime, not reducing crime, anything over 500 per 100,000. There's the United States, 700 and some per 100,000, way over 500. African Americans get locked up at the rate of almost 2,000 per 100,000, and 10 states lock up blacks at the rate of 4,000 per 100,000. Anything over 500, counterproductive. We know, and we start early, because that's the chart on juvenile incarceration. We're off the chart, so we don't even wait and start around. We know that this doesn't do anything to reduce crime. We know how to reduce crime for juveniles. You have to have a comprehensive long-term approach where you start early, teen pregnancy prevention to reduce the number of babies born into dysfunctional families. Prenatal care can reduce memory retardation, learning disabilities. Nurse visits right after birth can significantly reduce child abuse, which is highly correlated with future crime. Early childhood education, make sure the children can read by the 3rd grade, because if they can't read by the 3rd grade, then they're going to be in trouble. Teachers tell us up to the 3rd grade you learn to read. After the 3rd grade you read to learn. If you can't read by the 3rd grade, you are going to have trouble and on your way to dropping out, which creates another problem. This is a chart, African American males, 25 to 30, green, high school graduate, red, high school dropout, 1970, didn't make much difference whether you got a high school education or not, but by 2000, high school education isn't even enough. But if you dropped out of school, the chance of finding an African American male high school dropout on a job, about 3 out of 10 on a job, about a third out in the street looking for a job or giving up, and about a third in jail today. That's not probation, parole, outstanding warrants and whatnot. That's in jail today. And if you draw that line, you'll notice that's more than actually working. We know that the more you learn, the more you earn. And that chart just shows it distinctively. But we need to make sure they can read by the third grade. You have to have after-school programs to make sure they're off the street and into constructive activities, and on the way to college with college access programs like Upward Bound, and make sure the Pell Grants are there so they can get in, they can afford to go. All of that continuum of services, make sure we will eliminate the cradle to prison pipeline and create a cradle to college, a cradle to career pipeline. It's actually cheaper to do, because if you look at the money we're wasting, if you went down to 500 per 100,000 instead of the 2,200 you got, you notice out of 100,000, a community of 100,000 African Americans, they're wasting $50 million a year in counterproductive incarceration. And if you aim that at the no more than 30,000 children and divide through the math, that's $1,600 per child every year that you're wasting. And if you actually target the money to those at risk, they're wasting the equivalent of over $5,000 per child per year. 10 states are wasting the equivalent of almost $10,000 per child every year, codifying slogans and sound bites, wasting the taxpayers' money and doing nothing about crime.
All right, I hate to cut you off. I want to move to a different point.
Okay, let me finish.
Okay, sure.
Now, we know that these comprehensive approaches work. Every time you put one into effect, you significantly reduce the crime rate and save more money than you spend. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania's had many programs, Boston, Richmond. You save more money than you spend. And our challenge is to enact legislation like the Youth Promise Act that will take into consideration the ability to put together comprehensive plans, make the investments, save the money. If you reinvest the money, you can keep the programs going. That legislation is doing well in the House, but not so well in the Senate, where they're taking the different tough on crime, simple-minded approach to crime. But we know that we can solve this, and the only question is whether or not we're going to be serious about juvenile crime, or whether we're going to let politicians get away with simple-minded sound bites and slogans. That's the challenge we have. Not a question of what to do, not a question of whether we know what to do, but a question of what choice we're going to make, whether it's going to be simple-minded slogans and sound bites, or get down to basics and do what we know how to do, reduce crime and save money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Scott. I wanted to come out here because what I felt was that I was a little disconnected. I wanted to get the audience as well as participate. So if that's okay, if I come down here and interact with you all as well, if that's okay. Mayor, I don't know, we want to skip over you for 1 second, if that's okay. We want to save you for last. Mayor Hancock, if you would, 5 minute introduction about a little bit about your thoughts on the issue. Thank you, sir.
You want to talk from where you are?
I'm going to talk from where, yes. Whichever is most convenient, ma'am.
All right, and thank God. Thank you for letting me go before. I'm just saying. Listen, I am so honored to be here. Dr. Elsie Scott, thank you for pulling this panel together. When we talked about possibly doing this, she asked who are some of the people I would recommend are mayors, and certainly the first one on the list was Mayor Nutter out of Philadelphia, who's doing some wonderful work on this on a national level, but also in the city. I come at this issue really as not so much as a mayor, although let me tell you something, what has helped me most as mayor is when I personalize the issues, and particularly issues like this one. I'm a father of 3 teenage children. I was in Denver, Colorado as a teenager when California gangs were introduced into our very virgin city, had not had any type of gang activity to speak of in its history in the mid-1980s. I was there for the epic summer violence that we often talk about in Denver, Colorado, when gangs had reached their pinnacle, and we had violence almost every night in our city. On June 24th, a 32-year-old Denver police officer, African-American woman, 11-year veteran, single mother of a 12-year-old daughter, was shot and killed while trying to break up a fight at a very popular jazz in a park event that we hold every Sunday in Denver between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Selena Hollis fell victim to a gunshot wound to her head after a 16-year-old boy turned and fired randomly into the crowd as he departed from the melee that she was trying to break up. My phone began to ring that night while I was at home. I was supposed to speak at that Jazz in the Park event, but due to allergies, I decided to stay home and get the next one. My wife and daughter were at the event. I immediately called my wife, and sure enough, she was en route home and was not aware that gunshots had taken place. Shortly after that shooting, and after speaking to a 12-year-old girl and trying to help her understand that her mother was no longer there, I convened a group of gang members in my office trying to reconcile what was going on in the streets, because we had just experienced 10 gang-related shootings in Denver this spring and summer. And I had 14 young people sitting around my conference table, Mayor Nutter. None of them fit the image of what we would say, you're a gang member. They didn't come in with their pants sagging, they didn't come in with the gang colors that we normally associate with gangs. Indeed, these young people, actually a couple of them wore ties to walk into the mayor's office. And as they sat around the table and began to converse with me, I asked them one simple question: how did you end up here? And after each one of them confirmed that they are indeed a part and that they affiliate with a gang, when they said, Mayor, this is how I'm in a gang, every one of them said it was because of their family. Either they were born into a gang, or the family was so dysfunctional that they were looking for something that would give them what we all look for in life, and that is unconditional love and support and security. And as the conversation continued, there was a young lady in the room who I would not want to meet in a dark alley or on a bright sunny day. Her name was Kendra. Kendra had a tough attitude. She was sitting 3-4 members away from me. But every time I asked a question of this group, Kendra, being the most loquacious, was the first one to open her mouth. I found Kendra to be one of the more articulate, strategic, thoughtful young people I've ever seen. To the point where in the midst of one of her answers, I stopped her and I said, Kendra, you got to tell me something. I've sat across this table from world leaders from our nation, some of the most bright and successful business leaders this nation, we only read about. I've sat across this table. None of them come close to your ability to articulate themes and thoughts. You are so worthy. What brought you here? To which Kendra began to cry. First time I saw any crack of sensitivity in this young lady. 16 years old. And I just looked at her and I said, what are you crying for? To which Kendra responded to me, no one's ever said that to me. She said, you don't understand, I was cutting crack at the age of 5. Never had any semblance of what a family is. To which, that moment, I realized that my calling in this meeting was different from anything I ever thought. It wasn't about being a mayor. It's about saying to these young people together, all 14 of us, we're going to work together to figure this one out. So my hope in this conversation, listening to these panel of experts, so I get a chance to talk to you about some of the things we're doing in Denver, and that we recognize that this is a comprehensive problem. It's not one solution, not one group can solve this problem. There's going to be multiple pronged approach to solve this issue. And then I hope we also get a chance to talk about what I believe is one of the variables that we never talk about. And that is the role of these violent video games and movies are playing in the lives of our children, desensitizing them and dehumanizing those that they confront on the streets. Let's talk about it today, and let's hopefully walk out of here with some ideas around national solutions and best practices that we can take back to our own communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hancock. And as we continue, we do definitely want to open this up to a discussion to the audience. And there are some things that we do want to talk about as well. In addition to video games, we want to talk about mental health. We want to talk about gangs. We want to talk about education system. We want to talk about generational legacies. Fathers, grandfathers, now sons, following in the footsteps. Those are some of the things that we'll be discussing this morning. Please, Chief Bryant.
Good morning. I too am very truly honored to be here among this distinguished panel. And I stand here as a police officer for 35 years, but I also stand here as the president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. And I'm here to tell you that when we look at young people, we may not see the same things that you see. We see that they look just like us, and we know that we have to be the type of police officers, the type of law enforcement officers that help pull the kids from where they are. Yes, we arrest them. Yes, we have to do our job, and there are some kids that you have to sit down somewhere and let them get themselves together because they're just not ready to be in society right now, and that's so unfortunate. But first I'd like to say that the majority of African American youth who you don't see in the news or read in the newspapers are active in school, church, and in their community. It is only a small percentage of African American youth that you hear about and read about all the time. And it is their negative behavior and violent criminal activity that make the news. We have to be careful not to let society paint all children of color with the same brush. We should always, always celebrate their achievements and continue to wrap our arms around them to keep them safe. I just have a few slides to show you that may help you understand what we see. Now, these faces of these young men, they've all been arrested for some serious crimes. It's either aggravated assault, homicide, robbery. This is just moving away. But this is those same youth that you see right here. It's the same types of faces. Any city, you'll see young people like this who've been in trouble. Now, these are some of the problems that have, as Mayor Hancock says, asked the question of how did you get here, what brought you to this point. You'd be surprised until you've gone into some of these homes where you see that it's truly absentee parents, that they have no structure in their life, no discipline, unsafe environments, and many of the parents are involved in substance abuse, and they involve their children in substance abuse. The parents are in or out of the criminal justice system. A lot of the kids, what they're looking to do is just survive. Just survive. Any way they know how to do it, they survive, because that's all they know. Because they've had to fend for themselves for so long. They lack any effective social services. Because unless you're in a system, you don't get resources. You have to either be in the child welfare system or the criminal justice system before anyone really pays attention to you in some of those communities. They have no structure in their lives. They've been abused and exploited. And this is something that a lot of people miss. This is the key piece, the mental health issues. A lot of our children are suffering from mental health issues. Do you remember back when all kids, they were taking Ritalin, and then just to get them through school, because they were acting up in school, teachers didn't know what to do with them, how to handle them, give them a pill, so they'll sit there and be quiet, like little zombies. Well, when those kids grow up, and they stop going to school, they drop out, they're not getting their medication, they don't know how to cope, they don't know how to make decision making. So these are just to help you understand that our kids, they self-medicate to get that feeling back. They're abused, exploited, they self-mutilate, self-destruct. This is a research that was done in Pittsburgh. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but out of 5,000 stories, it was a study that was done. The only way that African American males were featured was if it was in sports or if it was in crime. So just think how they look at themselves, how they perceive themselves, the way other people perceive them. You know, if I'm not a sports star, you know that I'm a criminal. That's how I get noticed in this society. This is the contributing factors that need to survive, to take care of myself, to get what I need, guns, money, and drugs. Now, children, they have to have caring adults in their life. This is a photo that we took from one of our Take Your Kid to Work days. You have to start at this age, if not younger, you know, being a positive influence for kids. Now, Noble, we have all sorts of programming. I'm proud to say that the chair of our youth leadership program, Rhonda Glover, is sitting in the audience. We take kids, 250 kids from the city, and take them to our conferences. And all week long, we're teaching them, interacting with them. The kids, even the worst of the worst, know the difference between a good cop and a bad cop. Because we're out there, we're arresting kids. They know who's good and who's not good. And even though we're on different sides of the law, there's a certain amount of respect that they will give you. And especially if they see a police officer standing in a church soup line, you know, serving their parents or helping out volunteer in the community, there's a certain level of respect there that they'll talk to you. So we try to get children at early ages, and you have to have a positive interaction today to prevent a negative interaction tomorrow with kids. This is what I tell my police officers. I have 579 officers that I'm responsible for. And I tell them, even at the time that you're arresting a parent, pay attention to the kids that's in the room. Take a minute to say that the parent is going to be all right. Take a minute to soothe them and tell them things are going to be all right. Make sure that you don't leave those kids in the house, that you make sure that there's a caring adult there to take care of them as you're taking their parent off the deal. So there's things that we all can do, but we do have to take a holistic approach to keeping children safe.
Thank you, Chief Bryant. Mayor Nutter, you can open remarks please from there or at the podium, whichever you feel most comfortable.
I'll stay right here. Thank you, and again, Dr. Scott, thank you so very much, and to all the panelists, it really is an honor to be a part of this CDC Addressing Youth Violence in America discussion. I just want to touch on a couple things that we're doing, maybe having some level of success. We certainly have our challenges in Philadelphia, given the rates of violence lower than they were now than when I first came into office, but we've seen some uptick in the last year or so, and very troubling. Some of our response to that over the last 4.5 years that I've been in office is a significant amount of partnership. Kind of start with the premise, even before the recession, that government cannot solve all the problems of society. We have some solutions, and we certainly have a significant role to play. But we've partnered with a number of entities across the city government, across other governmental agencies, and certainly with our philanthropic community, our nonprofit community, and our corporate community. This past summer, in large response to some challenges we had in the summer of 2011 with flash mob activities, I told our folks to sit down and look at every program and service that we provide for young people, primarily during the summer. I'm sure as Mayor Hancock faces is the age-old refrain from just about every kid, "I'm bored, I don't have anything to do." We have 100+ rec centers across the city of Philadelphia, 70 swimming pools, a huge park system, after-school programs when school is in, and other activities at our libraries, et cetera, et cetera. And so we put all of that together and on a campaign called Fun, Safe Philly Summer, and really promoted it very well. Got a number of groups and organizations actively engaged, and certainly the school district, and we have a very large public school district, but also Catholic schools, charter schools, and independent or private schools as well, and made sure that they all received the same information, brochures, stuff up on our city website, reached out to our corporate community, and encouraging parents, winter going into spring, start signing your child up for program activities. Now, when I was a kid, I mean, the basic program was go out on the street, don't get in trouble, be back for dinner. Things have changed a little bit in the 500 years since I was a child. And so, we need a lot more structured program and activity for our young people, both during the school year and especially during the course of the summer. And so we had a significant amount of success. We did have some challenges at a couple of our rec centers. There were a couple shootings at centers. I decided a basketball game with 200 people out, 6 o'clock at night. Somebody's looking for somebody, saw them there, it's a crime of opportunity. And miraculously, actually no one knows who the shooter was. Everybody's there watching a basketball game, something jumps off, and all of a sudden everybody got blind. So, this is a whole other issue, and maybe this will come up in the course of our conversation. A bunch of years back, 3 or 4 years back, just as I was transitioning from city council into the mayor's office, one of my former colleagues created under our home rule charter, approved by the voters, the Philadelphia Youth Commission. So we have a charter created, Youth Commission, each of the council district members gets to appoint someone. These young people help us design and generate ideas and policy for young people in the city of Philadelphia. It's a serious organization, they have an executive director, and we spend a little money to make sure that they have the support that they need. 20 years ago, my predecessor mayor, the first African-American mayor of Philadelphia, Mayor W. Wilson Goode, toward the tail end of his second term, 2-term limit in Philly, created something called the Mayor's Advisory Commission on African-American Males. It then, unfortunately, sat dormant for about 20 years. I reinstituted it, reinvigorated it, and actually Mayor Goode is one of the co-chairs of that commission, focused on what's going on with African-American males in Philadelphia. In the course of this conversation, I'll give you some stats. Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement, after-school activity programs, our PAL centers, Philadelphia Youth Network, a lot of organizations that get funding from a variety of places. We partner with all of them. Our main goal is how do we figure out service, program, activity, design such that our really young ones, which I think we do a pretty good job at, everyone is challenged trying to figure out what excites or interests a teenager. If anyone here has figured that one out, I'd love to hear your ideas, because they change just about every day. We've given them a wealth of things to do, and quite frankly, I think we did not hear as much of the "we don't have anything to do" this summer. On the law enforcement side, just Wednesday, we announced that the Justice Department was in Philadelphia. We were the recipient of 2 grants, $1.5 million grant to help us with youth violence prevention programs, as well as we've just become a part of the National Forum on Youth Violence. There are 10 cities across America that are part of this conversation that provides additional resources, best practices work, and with a focus again on youth violence. Lastly, let me say that given the nature, at least in Philadelphia, and Mayor Hancock will talk about Denver, but from my experience, a significant amount of this violence is black on black. There's no getting around that. That will be uncomfortable for folks to talk about. We need to be uncomfortable based on what goes on in our cities all across America. And I want to give a particular shout out to Mayor Ms. Landry, who is not uncomfortable about talking about these issues. And so for non-African American mayors, for mayors not of color, it's a touchy subject. You walk into that one, you get tagged with all kinds of other stuff. You don't do anything about it, you're going to get tagged with that. So in the choice between the two, talk about it. Black folks are killing black folks each and every day. I did not hear that story out of D.C., but hopefully in the course of this, I have 2 questions. One, what was the point that the young person was trying to make? And secondly, where to get it done in the first place? Thanks.
We definitely want to come back to you. We definitely want to talk a little about what happened this past Memorial Day weekend. Dozens of shootings, just in one course, we have 30 shootings in one weekend. And also we'll talk about applying for grants as well. We'll get a little bit into what the process is like of applying for grants and who we go to and where should we go, things of that nature. We'll come back to you. Now, last but certainly not least, Marian Wright Edelman, if you can give us a brief overview as to what can be done, what should we be doing out there to address this issue of youth violence in America?
First is we should recognize recognize that this is not primarily a youth and child problem, it is a profound adult problem. Our children are doing what we do, and we are not standing up for them and our families, and the church is not the church, the neighborhood is not the neighborhood, the family is not the family. And so before we examine these youth violence and children's issues are a symptom of a breakdown of community and the absence of voice in the public policy context. We adults have got to get our act together and reclaim our children. And I can give you the facts, I'm not going to give you more facts. Pick up 2 sheets here. There are 4 pages, look at them. Second, let me just say that the black child faces the worst crisis since slavery, and we're all moving backwards. The whole premise of the civil rights movement is we want our children to get an education and do better than we did, and let us look at what our children are doing. You want to know why they're shooting at folks? They're crying out for help, see me, help me, and the gangs or their families, because they don't have positive alternatives to the streets. But let's just take 4 facts. The majority of all black children today, after the last huge numbers of decades, and talk about education, Brown versus Board of Education, cannot read or compute at grade level in 4th, 8th, or 12th grade if they haven't already dropped out. And about 40% of our children have dropped out, and when they graduate from high school, roughly not reading, they're reading at 8th and 9th grade level. What are you going to do in this globalized economy? You can't read and compute. You're being sentenced to social and economic death. Jobs are not there. Jobs are sure not there for college dropouts, and for high school dropouts. And so they can't read. They can't add and subtract. They can't get a job. They have no sense of a future. That's why they're being relegated to the prison pipeline. And 1 in 3 of our children are black boys. They're going to go to prison in their lifetime. 1 in 6 Latino boys. So if you combine the miseducation, the lack of education, we've got to pick up that banner and speak the truth about what's going on there and insist that our children get what they need in our public schools, with the incarceration rates, which we're now in the 3rd generation of families and fathers and being pulled out of families, and with 70% out of more than 70% out of wedlock rates, which almost guarantee the poverty of the next generations of children and single mothers, even if they can find jobs, and many of them do want the jobs, cannot earn enough to support their children, and so again they don't have a house, but they're all being siphoned off to prison, to joblessness, and to drugs and hopelessness. And if you combine those factors, and you look at what happens from before birth, and we're making progress. But many black children and poor children are being born with 3 and 4 strikes against them, and we're standing for it. So I just want to say, we've got to wake up and look at what has been happening and build that movement that we have got to have to protect our children who are crying out for help. We did a study in New Orleans, which was the leading city in gun violence, right before Katrina that came out, and we talked to a lot of criminologists. It came out a week before Katrina, we never published it because we had to think about it. And after talking to criminologists and looking at what was happening, it turned out that they said that the gun violence in New Orleans was a symptom of a child effect. The children had not been socialized by anybody. They didn't even have gangs in New Orleans, and they were just randomly, they would shoot anybody about anything. We updated that recently. I published it. We were talking about it, trying to assess it, and had an update by the Pulitzer Prize winning report in New Orleans, because the gangs are all back. Katrina washed it all out. They left, went off. They're now back. And we're finding the same resurgence of violence. A 5-year-old killed by an AK-27 random shooting. It's just totally out of control again. But the absence of adult socializing influences in the family, in the neighborhood, in the school, in the church, what has happened to our connection with our children? How are we going to get back to reclaiming them and to speaking up for them in the public policy arena as well? And I just want to reaffirm a couple of things here. Children don't come in pieces. You've got to sort of look at the whole child, and good public policy ought to reflect, or each of us want our own parents, and we don't have adults are putting their own interests first. And we need to kind of get our movement together to say that our children, we're going to put you first. And we're going to look at the whole child, and we're going to have a continuum of care, we're going to have positive alternatives. I want to reinforce what the chief said about the first thing we did 22 years ago, when we started a black community crusade for children quietly, was to say, let's begin to affirm the kids that are doing well, despite homelessness, abuse, and all the other. We've got about 700 of them now. We've gone to college, they're doctors and lawyers, but we got to lift them all up. So we got to beat the odds. You want to do that, do it in every city. Let them all see what they can become and give them hope, because many of them can't even envisage a future that's worth waiting for and striving for. So we'd love to have you talk about BPI's. Freedom Schools, Mayor, are beginning to work. We've got 150, 60 of them around the country, some of them in juvenile detention facilities, and when college students come in, particularly black male college students and Latino male college students are going into these freedom schools and reconnecting with these children. They came from the same neighborhoods that they came from, but somehow managed to get out. They're turning these young people around. They just need somebody to see them, to hear them, to respond to them, to give them a sense of hope, and to give them a sense that there's a future. And there are a lot of models, and we can talk about that. Let me just tell you, we redid. I'm so glad we started by asking, when we started about 22 years ago, and there's been no better advocate in Congress than this, and I'm just very grateful for the mayor's voice on gun control. When we started this Black Community Crusade for Children, very quietly, when John Hope Franklin guarded the heights of coke and being with us, we decided to make sure that we didn't act as if we knew what the problems were, and we did the first focus groups and polls for Black youth and Black families. And I thought we knew what we thought we don't see that starting. The number one issue was gun violence and the belief by the children and the adults that they were not there to adulthood. I mean, the Washington father here, and you know, who said, I come out your door and you see a dead body, this has become the norm. And when you see something cracking around you, you fall to the floor. When it becomes the norm, these things are, you know, everywhere. You can only wonder. In my mind, I'm pretty concerned with teen pregnancy prevention. But I remember the mother in Chicago who told us, if she comes home pregnant, I can deal with that. At least she's alive. The young men who were impregnating all these young women, so this is the only way of getting some sense of mortality. It's about hopelessness, lack of opportunity, lack of adult role models, lack of adult caring, and we have got to reweave that fabric. And all these outside things, I agree. Turn off BET and all these we're the most violent culture, we glorify violence, and you ask young people not to do what they see on the TV every day, what they see in the video every day, what they hear in their music, and there's nobody to talk to them. Sit down with family, and sit down with church, and sit down. So we've got to deal with the cultural signals. Our children just being bad at here, looking for a sense of vision and hope, and that's got to come from the adults. So we adults have got to fight for them the way those adults who didn't have very much in the civil rights movement, but they wanted to have a better education for their children, and they sacrifice everything. We don't have that attitude today. I tell you, it is hard getting stuff done for children, and for Black, poor children today, so wake up. Last, I just want to end with and again, pick up these two things, look at them. There are a number of alternatives that lay out here. We've got to reweave family, we've got to reweave community, we've got to find our voice for our children, we've got to connect with them on an ongoing basis. They've got to be after school and summer programs, and we've got great models, mayors, and you've got some of them. We've got to have gun control. You got to stop these. I mean, Washington, the gang's got AK-47s and drones to kill a 5-year-old. What in the world is the matter with us? Please don't even have AK-47s. We've got a number of gun control measures, and I'm just again grateful for the mayor's leadership on this. And they can get a gun quicker than they can get a library book. They have told us. And now they're running guns and have safe spaces to hide them. We got to deal with guns. And the NRA's got to stop their policies. We've got to stand up to the NRA. Who else is going to stand up to the NRA if Black folks don't do it? So I just hope that we will talk about, see our children, see them crying out for help. There are a number of suggestions of things that you can do both in your families and your communities. But we need to try to stop the adult hypocrisy. You know, I mean, if Black adults walk around carrying guns and I have the worst conversations about that, what do you expect the children to do? If Black folk are sitting there abusing children and look at the figures, what do you expect children to be? And we're still permitting corporal punishment, which we've outlawed in prisons, at least theoretically, but we're beating them at home. Look at this, and look at what we're allowing in school. What do you think? If you have school officials, throw them out of school and arrest them on school grounds with handcuffs at 6 and 7, and the Black adult community stands there and doesn't say anything, I think we've lost our lives. We need to have adults become adults again and to put our children first. And we know how to do it, so look at these things, look at our website, and we're really there to try to work with you, but they are crying out for help. Let me just end with Dr. King, who I think called a lot of this very clearly. He was very depressed in the last days of his life. I only knew him, I think, when he was mostly depressed. I met him in college, but he really was very depressed in the last days of his life because he thought that we were integrating into a burning house. And when he was very honest in talking to young people, he spent a lot of time talking to young people. And I always loved him because he didn't think he had all the answers, didn't have nobody going to do the next day, but he would step out in faith and said he believed the results of the Lord, but you keep working. But he said, when he was asked, what would you do? He said, I got to become a fireman. You got to sound the siren, because he said that the triple evils of militarism, gang, look at violence, excessive materialism, look at how we're being sold all these things. We don't give them jobs and education they can afford to buy legally. The violence of poverty and racism, we're going to destroy us all if we did not do something about it. And so I would just say this is a time for all of us to become firemen, to get ourselves together, to get some voice, to let our children know we see them and hear their cries, and to take the range of steps, complicated, and to build a new politics we don't have to give them a sense that there's hope in the future. Thank you.
What we're going to do, and I know there's some questions in the audience, I know there's some thoughts in the audience, and I know there are some experts out there in the audience as well. We definitely want to get to you. But let's draw a couple of things.
They're two separate.
Couple of things. Mayor, not to answer your question, the point that the young man made, I opened for those who were not here this morning, or when I started, the young man shot his high school classmate. He was 16, classmate was 18, and he kept saying he wanted to make a point. Well, it turns out that the two kids were arguing over how he was dressed. Apparently he was being teased. What the point was, the defense says we don't know what the point is. The prosecutor says the point was he wanted to kill him. That was the point he wanted to make. Where the child got the gun, we don't know. But that leads me to my first question to Chief Bryant. Chief Bryant, where are young people getting these guns? Just a few months ago, we just sent 5 young men were locked up for the rest of their lives for spraying a crowd of children with an AK-47. Right here in right here in Washington, D.C. Where are young people getting these guns?
They're getting them in the streets. There's a mountain on every corner. And what happens is, drugs are such that people who live in the suburbs or who are addicted to drugs, they steal them from their families who are gun collectors. They bring them into the city. They sell them on the street. There are young women who can go into a gun store and buy whatever because they're 21, they don't have a record, they are able to buy a gun. They buy a gun and give it to their boyfriend. They report it stolen. They go buy another gun. Guns get on the street that way. Guns get on the street from irresponsible gun owners who don't secure their weapons, who put them in their car, have them in their home, to where young people can get access to them. Burglars who are addicted to drugs, burglarize homes, they get the guns, they get them on the street. I mean, it's so easy for a child to buy a gun on the street. It's just unbelievable. And then the other thing is that our young men, when they reach the age of 21, don't have a record. The first thing they want to do is go apply for that license so they can legally buy a gun for protection. I mean, that's the thing. When they reach the age, have a clean record, they want to buy it.
Well, let me ask you this question, Congressman Scott. I'm sure you've heard about this. They want to increase gun laws. Will that deter anything? More gun laws. The NRA is obviously very adamant about additional gun laws. I've even heard people in Chicago who've gotten threats, allegedly, from NRA members who are out there trying to stop additional gun laws. What can be done?
Well, when you said passing gun laws, the last one that passed in Virginia was a bill to repeal 1 gun a month, which would limit you to buying just 1 firearm a month.
What, a month?
A month. Which essentially would cut out gun running, because you couldn't stock up and then run up to New York, sell them, and come back with the money. They repealed that this session. So when you talk about new laws, my first reaction was all the new laws that are passing are making things worse. The gun show loophole where you can have a record and go buy a firearm at a gun show because you don't have background checks. Closing that little loophole, it has been virtually impossible. It's up to the voters. If you vote for people that support gun control, then we can make a difference. If you vote for people that will vote against any kind of gun laws, including gun laws to limit access to machine guns and military assault weapons, which have one purpose, and that is to kill a lot of human beings quickly. It's the only purpose of a military assault gun. I mean, you're not going out deer hunting with a military assault gun. The only purpose, and if you vote for people that will oppose a restriction on military assault weapons, then that's what's sitting up in Congress today, in most state legislatures. People have to think about this when they vote.
Just here in, Mr. I'll get right to you, just here in Maryland, Prince George's County, a young girl shot dead in her bed, sleeping in her bed. Somebody kicked in her door, shot dead. A week after that, a young boy walking to school, shot dead. It is amazing to see covering crime. I see it just about every week. I see several victims. I see the victims of the family, and I also see victims of the shooter, the mothers, the grandmothers, and those family members. And we're talking about young men, but there are young women out there, are there not? Are there also young women? Chief, what are you seeing in terms of also young women who are showing these acts of aggression? And then, Ms. Edelman, I want to get to you to respond.
The young women are turning out to be almost, if not more so, worse than the young men. It's the lifestyle of young women. All you have to do is go to any inner city and listen to the young girls talk. They're rolling a baby buggy and they're cussing. Their language is so nasty. You know, they encourage young men to be involved into that thug life and that drug activity because they got to get their nails done, their hair done. You know, they want to go here, they want to go there. Someone needs to actually really reach out to the young women as well as the young men. The young women are the mothers of children, and what you see is kids raising kids without any skills. If they didn't receive it themselves, they can't give it to their offspring. And it's a perpetual cycle that's getting worse and worse. And the whole thing of peer pressure. And there's like the young people that I see a lot is they are conforming to cultural expectations. If you don't think I'm going to amount to anything, I'm not going to amount to anything. You know, it's just that whole, just like the young woman that you were talking about, very intelligent, but on first appearance, she looks just like in that thug life. A lot of our young people they're engaged in violent activity. They're not stupid. They're not some of the drug dealers. I mean, they're mathematicians. They know where all their money is. Where all their drugs, who got what?
How to add.
And how to add quickly. They're very intelligent, but the cultural expectations is for them to appear non-intellectual.
Ms. Edelman.
No, I just want to reinforce something. Girls are the fastest growing part of the population now. And you potentially know we are, you know, they got a long way to go to catch up with males, black males, and we need to recognize that, and that scares me more about how do you pay attention to the whole child, girls and boys in the context of family. There are a number of gun control measures, and I got 2 files filed for those who can't stand anything police say, but then the gun file is a special hate file. We've got to break the lock. I mean, I have a special NRA hate file. You talk about gun control and they go crazy. I want to just simply say that in addition to what the chief said in terms of kids living on the street, and black youth violence is really a problem. Most of the mass killings that have come have been by white young people. And most of these guns come from their homes. And we have got to begin to talk about, you can't fool children, everything that's going on at their home. But I just want to point out while we're sitting here talking about black on black violence, that having guns in the home and where all these mass killings came from, 98% of them got their guns right in that home and had mental health problems or bullying problems. We haven't had a whole lot of mass killings by black children. It's been by white children. And so
we do ours day to day. We don't do the mass thing.
We don't do the mass stuff.
I want him, and I won't get him, and then I'm done for maybe a week or so, and then I can get somebody else.
Well, Marian, can I talk a little bit about Aurora? Not too far from Denver. What type of residual effect, if any, did you all put down in Denver as a result of that mass shooting in the movie theater by the young man?
Well, you know, one of the things that I mentioned toward the end was these violent video games and movies that children are watching. Dr. Edelman talks about the desensitization of our children. They're desensitized because parents have relegated the parenting of their children to movies and to video games. You walk in any home, the kids are like this on the video game while parents are off doing whatever they're doing. And what that's done, study has proven, is it desensitized those kids to real life realities and has made them, they dehumanize those of us who come in contact with. Now in Aurora, what we know about this young man is, one, he had a lot of mental health challenges, has a lot of mental health challenges. Two, he was so into the Dark Knight or the Batman movie that he really got into the role of the Joker. And if anyone saw the first Black Knight movie, it is the Black Knight, right? I saw it. I remember the Dark Knight. The Joker was a very dark character. In fact, the actor who played it killed himself a couple years after that, right? Yeah. So when the police approached him shortly after the shooting, he was standing next to his car. When they approached him, he said he was the Joker. And he had the red hair and he had the makeup on and what have you. He had become so desensitized, he dehumanized everyone in that theater. And he, in his mind, was acting out, the movie. Now, I'm not his defense attorney nor the prosecutor, but now we're seeing this kind of play toward the insanity plea, and we're going to see that come very soon. I can almost guarantee you, we'll see that. And it's unfortunate, but this is an issue that's plaguing our communities, particularly in the black communities. Our kids are playing these videos. They're violent. And we talk about everything that we want to talk about with regards to young people. It's just part of the menu of things that we're going to have to address effectively as we move to address this issue of violence.
Yes, I want to go back to something Ms. Wright Edelman said, and the Chief may have mentioned it as well. So, guns. Strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Big supporter of the First Amendment. I think I should have the right to walk down the street and not be shot. A couple months into my first term, working with our city council, they put forward 5 pieces of legislation, one of which was that you had to report your weapon lost or stolen. So Pennsylvania has one of the most restrictive gun preemption statutes of any state in the United States of America. We apparently also have the second largest membership in the NRA. Pennsylvania is a tremendously rural state. Folks believe in it's a rite of passage, especially in the western part of the state. Actually, the first day of hunting season in Pennsylvania, schools are closed, and fathers, mostly, could be moms as well, take their children, mostly boys, probably sometimes girls, and it's a part of the culture. But this is about legitimate hunting and shooting and folks going through training programs, et cetera, et cetera. So that gives you context for Pennsylvania. A little different in Philly. So legislation passes, and on my 100th day in office, I was sued by the NRA. One of the proudest moments of my nearly 20-year career in public service. Those fights went up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We won 3, lost 2, but the lost and stolen provision. So, I mean, it shows you just how extreme the NRA is. Now, if you want to make a claim on your car being stolen, you have to report it. Why wouldn't you have to report a lost or stolen weapon? This is what the chief said. Weapons are lost, quote unquote, on purpose. They find their way to all kinds of folks' hands. I don't want to, Ms. Wright Edelman said it really fast, I want to slow this one down. You can rent guns in cities all across America.
Rent,
rent. Yes. Go to the stash house, put down your money, what do you want, how long do you need it for, and you best bring it back. You can rent guns in cities all across the United States of America. That's a new line of business. Guns are now, you know, if you're a good customer at a store, you buy whatever you buy, and you know maybe they throw in some peppermints or something to go with it. Guns are now the icing on the cake for big drug transactions. You got all your drugs, took care of your money, you're a good customer. Let me put 5 guns on top of that. Have a good day. There are no gun manufacturing plants in Philadelphia. Yet we have a proliferation of guns. We confiscate 5,000 to 7,000 guns a year from folks on the street or from their cars. So there are a lot of guns floating around. They're already there. It's not so much that they're coming from anywhere, they're there. And they just circulate and circulate and circulate. Got bodies all over them, serial numbers obliterated. And if we get any information, if we're fortunate, a good police worker or a tip or something, we can usually put a body with that gun and then try to arrest the person. That's what we're dealing with out here. The NRA is completely unreasonable. They have a lock on many general assemblies of state legislatures all across the country. And, of course, with the exception of Congressman Scott, many members of Congress are fearful, tremble at the idea of even thinking about an assault weapons ban. Now, why would any civilian in the United States of America need an AK-47? For what? That's what we're up against on a daily basis. We're the only ones who can do anything about it. So it is about partnership again. Working with mayors across the country, I'm sorry I don't know a little bit. So I'm currently the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I mentioned Hancock and Landry, there's a bunch of mayors, 20 so, some of us ain't grown. Created something called Cities United. We partnered with the National League of Cities and the Knight Foundation, Casey Found programs, focus on the issue of violence in America, which disproportionately affects African-American males, unlike anyone else. 75% of the homicide victims in Philadelphia, black men. 80% of the people we arrest for homicide in Philadelphia, black men. Number 1 cause of death for black males between 15 and 34, homicide. Every day. In most big cities across America.
Welcome to Congressman. I see your hand. We'll get right back to you. Thank you, Mayor, for that. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to throw this out. I see some pastors in the audience. I see some people in churches in the audience. I want to see the impact or what role churches should be playing, if any, in all of this. And also, what role should former gang members be playing in this? There's a program across the city called Ceasefire, where former gang members are working with young people to ensure that crime does not escalate. So we want to talk a little bit about that as well. Congressman Scott.
You know, the title of the workshop is Addressing Youth Violence in America. Maybe we should have put a word to begin with is seriously addressing youth violence in America. Because if you wait, we're talking about killing children and all that. Let me tell you, if you wait until people have started dealing drugs and shooting people before you deal with a problem, it's too late. It's too late. We've had both mayors talk about going to the library and early intervention programs where you get young people on the right track and keep them on the right track. Once they've gotten so far over that they're shooting people, I mean, and then think that the gun control is going to save us. Not. Why do the children want guns to begin with? And whatever kind of gun control you got, we can kind of help it at the margins a little bit. Let me tell you, whatever kind of gun control you got, isn't going to solve the problem because you got straw purchases, you got people who can buy guns at gun show loophole. If they want a gun, there is very little we can do in gun control, and we can do a little bit at the margins, but we're not going to cure it with gun control. We got to get young people on the right track and keep them on the right track, and that is a choice we make. Now, it is not, doesn't make it, you're in the media. Now, you know, it doesn't make a good headline when all the children start going to the library and nobody starts shooting everybody. The only one that's going to make your headline is the one to get shot, and that's where everybody's going to focus. No politician is going to get elected by handing out library cards or opening up a new Boys and Girls Club. Maybe you got to do a little ribbon cutting photo, but that's about it. If you're going to be serious about reducing juvenile crime, you got to start early, as Marian and I mentioned, teen pregnancy prevention, prenatal care, all the way up continuum of services to get them on the right track and keep them on the right track. When the discussion focuses on drug dealing and killing in gangs, once they've already gotten into a gang, I mean, it's too, they shouldn't have gotten into the gang to begin with. And we know how to do it. And it saves more money than it costs. And so, if we're going to get serious, we just have to make that choice that we're going to be serious, we're going to start early, we're not going to let our children start getting into gangs. And we pointed out why they get in gangs.
That was my next question. What is the reason why you
well, we already said it. Yeah, but let's just be serious. People are intelligent, they make choices. Yeah. Now, what kind of society do we have when a young person with all the gang initiation thinks, that's my best choice? What kind of adult system do we set up for children, that's the best choice they got? We need to set up a system where they got better choices, where to stay in the school, they get the name of the newspaper for something other than sports and killing. We need to set up a system where we can get them on the right track and keep them on the right track and be serious. And when we start talking about killings, I mean, by the time you get past this, it's just too late.
Can I quote?
Thug life, popular. That's where they get their notoriety. It's made it popular. You know, the youth who are doing the most violent crimes, you would think that they're hopeless, but you can't think that they're hopeless. You have to continue to reach out to them. You know, you have to continue to show them that there is a different way, that they have other options. And I'm a firm believer that it's a parent's responsibility to raise a child. But I've seen in my experience that there's so many parents who have no idea how to raise a child because there was nobody to raise them. So this youth violence is an epidemic. And if we start treating it like an epidemic and putting the resources in prevention and intervention, starting at an early age, yes, you have to start in daycare now. You have to start in daycare to really make a difference. But that's where the prevention is, starting in daycare. The intervention comes for those kids that are out there killing one another. Because it is black on black crime. It is. But society has kind of made it like that. Kids feel like you don't care about them. Their clothes even show you that sagging pants, what are they telling you? You don't care about me, you can blank, blank, blank.
Keith, let me follow through on that because you mentioned people in mental health and other systems. Actually, the ones that we see are in all the systems. The school discipline system, mental health system, social services system, everything. And the fact is, if we want to do something about crime, you got some juvenile experts around the table to talk about what can we do to reduce juvenile crime. They will talk till the end of the program without mentioning the criminal justice system. We had a hearing. They're going to say, you won't hear anybody talking about zero tolerance and mandatory minimums and trying more juveniles as adults. By the way, that's a nice little soundbite, trying more juveniles as adults. They did a study in Florida where they tracked 5,000 young people who had committed serious offenses and were tried as adults. 80% of them walked out of court. Suspended sentence, probation, not guilty, just walked out of court. If they had been held in the juvenile system, they would have gotten some services. Education, psychological services, family services. The judge could have done something, but no, we cracked down on crime and put them right on back out in the street. We have to make sure that we get into getting young people on the right track, keeping them on the right track. It's boring because all you're doing is reducing crime and saving money. And you're not making the headlines that'll help you get elected by jumping up on a soapbox after a child has killed somebody and dealing drugs and kill somebody. That's when you make the headlines and help yourself get elected. We need to get serious, and when you have politicians jumping on a soapbox, yelling and screaming about the criminal justice system, trying to do something about juvenile crime, helping themselves get elected, doing nothing about juvenile crime, we need to make sure that somebody in the audience points out that the true way of dealing with it is prevention and early intervention. Getting young people on the right track, keeping them on the right track, and say stop wasting the taxpayers' money on counterproductive incarceration.
And the final point.
And that really is, before he just said what he said, I want to pick up on an earlier point by Congressman Scott. I mean, it's a nonprofit organization, no politics here, but you've got 3 elected officials. So you're going to get a little bit. It is about who gets elected, and then it is about accountability. And the things that are going on in Congress right now, the cuts that get proposed, and this insanity that we might be moving toward, called sequestration. Anyone really knows what that means? Love to talk to you about it. I mean, it's a word that hard to pronounce, and you really don't know what it's all about. But I can tell you one thing: Hancock and I will know what it's about when it comes down on our heads with the kind of cuts that they're talking about. And it's social service programs, it's domestic programs. Now, the president ended 2 wars. There must be some amount of savings. We've helped build up half of the rest of the world in places where we get engaged, and I don't want to get into a war discussion, but there has to be some amount of nation building here in the United States of America. And this is about service, these are about programs, and as the Congressman said, I'll go a step further, when people start talking this nonsense out the side of their mouth or the side of their neck, they need to be called on it. 11 years ago, on 9/11, 2,977 people were killed in 3 different locations. A field in Pennsylvania, Washington, and New York. In 2011, 14 cities across the United States of America, the top 5 cities and another 9. 2,981 people were killed by homicide. 11 years ago, we created an agency that didn't exist and put a seat at the cabinet table for the then president. The Secretary of Homeland Security, and created the Transportation Security Administration. Spent billions of dollars, hired hundreds of thousands of people to make sure that all of us are secure, almost have to take off all your clothes and get on an airplane. But we feel safe and secure. I'd like to see the same level of safety, the same amount of resources, and the same amount of focus on being safe walking around my neighborhood. That's right.
I know there are a lot of questions in the audience, so I would like to just put your hands up. We will try to get to as many of the questions as possible. I'm going to run around like Carl Lewis around here, but I definitely want to get your points across. We want to keep them short. What we're trying to do is hopefully something will spark somebody and take some things back, all right? Yes, sir. Your name and where you're from.
My name is Wallace Gator Bradley. From Chicago, Illinois. You can Google me, the Gator, former enforcer, against disciple, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. Father this one, work with your program. Glad you became mad at them. And I'm glad that you in charge of all the matters.
I work with all of them.
Dealing with solution, because I'm tired of everybody telling me don't know what to do.
Right.
So I want to be first to say I do know what to do.
Let's hear it.
Let's start on that. The first thing is this. They trick us with words. Gang is a group of individuals to be socially and regular. I'm saying this. In your town, the reason that murder started coming down because when you was a councilman, you convinced the mayor to reach the brother like myself in the street and get the word to the brother behind the wall to let the youth know that they get more honor and respect if they did certain things. That's what we have to do again. The 3 moral issues that we have to put in our community is the senseless shooting killings, the raping of women and children, the disrespecting and robbing the elders are not to be tolerated, nor respected, nor accepted. Those brothers and sisters in the penitentiary, they still parents. If their children and grandchildren that they tell don't do what they do, go to school, they become collateral damage and the shootings in our community. I'm just saying, I got a man in Chicago that don't understand our situation. Because for him not to get up with Gator to help stop the violence in his town, he know I know how to do it. I'm just saying I wish that you would do like I'm in on this. Everything that can be done.
Thank you.
And I'm saying said, if you want to know how to do it, get up with Gator. It's 312-371-6914.
No more questions. Thank you, sir. That's a good point. But Chicago is, the young man does raise a good point. Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia are seeing unprecedented killings and shootings. Unprecedented killings and shootings. And what we're trying to do is see what can be done. And it sounds like what the young man is saying is that politicians, at least in Chicago, just don't seem to address that. What can residents do other than vote someone in, vote someone out? What can they do to get their mayor, their city council person to address these issues?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not in Chicago. I certainly pay attention to what's going on in all the cities across the country. I do know your mayor. I'm not going to get into a thing with you about Mayor Emanuel. The mayor, Ron Emanuel, that I know, cares very passionately about his city. There are apparently some unusual things going on in Chicago, but I don't have anything to say about that because I got some unusual stuff going on in Philadelphia. So judge not lest ye be judged. But the community has a role to play. First of all, we had a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old shot not too long ago in Philadelphia. There was a block party, some stuff jumped off. No one has stepped forward to tell us who shot a 2-year-old in the city. And somebody knows. Somebody knows. So one of the things that I did was we put a $20,000 down in the heads of anybody who commits murder in Philadelphia. We will give you $20,000 for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in a homicide. We put out on our city's website the top 100 wanted people in the city of Philadelphia for violent crime. In 3 months, 87 of them were in custody. So the community can do a whole lot. It's about information, it's about collaboration. If you want a safer city, you cannot leave that solely to the responsibility of either the mayor or the police department. It's your city. If you want a safer city, get involved and make it a safer place.
Thank you very much.
I didn't come here to do that, so I don't want you to think that this was a setup. But I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a founder of a non-profit organization by the name of the West Philadelphia Coalition of Neighborhoods and Business. And we represent over 300,000 people in West and Southwest Philadelphia. Mayor Nutter, when he was the council person and trying to get the city to move in the direction he's articulating today, he now has a chance to implement those various programs. My organization is a community organization that's been chartered by the city to work with the city around a new youth study center. More proactive than reactive in terms of crime that's going on in our particular city. He's hired a commissioner by the name of Ambrose. He's asked that the entire youth community in our city be looked at. He took apart all of those elements that was in place because this youth violence and all of the elements that's dealing with our youth is very fluid. You can't put yourself in a box and not think that these kids are not thinking almost as fast as you. You got to be willing to look at what's going on now, what you expect in the future. You have some very intelligent kids that's out there today. And they're looking at images. They're looking at our religious community. They're looking at our political community. I mean, anytime that you can have a politician that's talking about he don't care about the 47% of the nation, something wrong with that attitude. And so what that means to us is that these kids is emulating not only some of what we call the bad elements in our particular community, but some of the elements that we think are good in our community, good examples that turn out to be bad. This mayor here, Michael Hancock, has improved the city of Philadelphia in terms of youth violence that for decades to come, and he's still moving in that particular.
Mayor Nutter, this is what I approve that message.
This is an action statement for Marian Wright Edelman. You have a program from the cradle to jail prison pipeline. I like to offer, we've been talking about Gator said best. you got a whole, a large percentage of individuals who have been incarcerated, right? They've done some self-development while they were in. They're coming out to no social networks whatsoever, right? Some of them got degrees and everything else. However, they may have here in the District of Columbia one or two groups, like Ceasefire, wonderful group, Lines of Concern, but that's not enough. We got an epidemic of black-on-black violence here in the District of Columbia. And our young people are involved in it. And what I'd like to extend to you, it's a lot of us out here, I'm one of them. We would like to sit down with you and talk about doing something.
I would love it. We just had a great teach-in at the Children's Benjamin this week with formerly incarcerated folks. I don't know if you were still there when Ndume, who got out of prison a month before our national conference in Cincinnati. He'd been wrongfully convicted and in jail for 28 years, half on death row, finally got out a month before. But he and other young people who are smart, who've been in and out of the drug trade, but they came and they did a teach-in that was, I sent them out to the Juvenile Detention Center. I'm going to send them out to schools all over this country. And at Haley Farm, we're going to be doing two things: serious, nonviolent, organized trade. We've got to get the whole concept of nonviolence back. Second, all of them want to tell them why they got to stay out of the system and ways to stay out of the system. And we just examined it. But thirdly, we really do want to hook up. We've got spiritual support groups in the D.C. General Prison. So we're going to use, you're the best messengers, the formerly incarcerated. And so I would love to hook up with you, but we're way down that path of trying to do that. They're the best teachers.
Thank you very much. Next question.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you. Noble works with formerly incarcerated street advocates. They're wonderful. Within the police department, Pittsburgh Police Department, we work with them all the time. But I just wanted to say that some of those fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers that are behind bars, they're still running things. They're still exploiting their kids. So although we work with formerly incarcerated individuals or citizens, you just have to make sure that they're working on the same page that you're working on. That's just the law enforcement piece of me.
There's a question.
Yeah, Dr. Edelman, you said that during Dr. King's last days he was kind of depressed and that he thought we were integrated into a broken house. Was there a bigger message that would relate to today in terms of this integrated into a broken house?
A burning house.
A burning house.
A burning house. That was consumed by excessive militarism, excessive materialism. We're killing to have trinkets. Excessive racism and poverty. And it's about a fundamental values problem in this country. And we've got to address that. When he died, calling for a Poor People's Campaign, there are 11 million poor children today. There are 16.1 million poor children. And if you don't have enough to eat, and you don't have homes, and you don't have hope, you're gonna get into trouble in many ways. I'm amazed at the number of young people who don't because of that. And when you look at the schools now and lack of education, but he just thought that America was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world and that we just were not taking care of those at the bottom. His last sermon title that he called his mama the day he was assassinated was Why America May Go to Hell. That was what he was going to preach on the next Sunday. And he kept telling the story of Dives and Lazarus and the rich man. And he said, it's not a problem to be rich, it's when you don't see your brother and make sure there's a concept of enough. And you should not have poverty in rich America. You can't have 1%, taking all of the while you got all these poor folk. And I don't begrudge anybody their first million or billion. If there are no hungry children, no homeless children, no uneducated children. But here we've got a Ryan budget that is after all of this, all these folk, all this brought this world economy, our national economy to its knees. They're proposing to take more money in tax cuts, extend the Bush tax cuts, about $129 million per person, and on top of that, give the top 1% another $265,000. How are they going to pay for that? By cutting safety net social net programs for the hungry and poor. Now there is something fundamentally evil and wrong about it. And we have got to rise up and say no. So he just thought that America, just our values were wrong. Pride is wrong.
I just want to add this because when Dr. Edelman said that, you know what came to my mind was I was in Cincinnati and Susan Taylor, the former editor of the Essence magazine, spoke. And this is a perfect message to give these kids, is that she told a story about going to Africa, and the Africans looking at her going, you just don't know who you are. And the problem with our young people is that, particularly African American youth, is that there is a story behind them that no other race of people can tell. And that is that over 400 years of challenges and degradation and slavery, African American youth are the offsprings of some of the strongest DNA in the world. And that failure, drug addiction, dropping out of school, violence is simply not a part of their survival DNA. And we forget to inject that and share that with our young people. So when you share that quote about Dr. King, that story about forgetting who you are and where you've come from is the disconnectedness that came to my mind that Susan Taylor shared in Cincinnati several years ago. And as adults, we have a responsibility to pass on that tradition and really the power of their survival and DNA, that none of this that we're dealing with is part of our history or DNA and did not bring us to this point.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I just have a quick question.
Use the mic.
I have a question.
Use the microphone.
I just wanted to ask a quick question on the religious, dealing with the religious area here. There's a serious social and religious shift that's going on in America, specifically with our youth, and specifically the youth in the northeast urban space corridor. That religious shift, no one is talking about. This gentleman here from Philadelphia, he's very much familiar with it. Anyone that's in the urban areas, that is an Islamic shift that is going on with our youth. It is no longer a Christian shift with the young black males. I'm a third generation Muslim in this country. All right, third generation. And there is a shift that needs to be an indigenous Islamic national political framework in this country. If we're going to deal with our youth, that's the way they're going. If you go on the internet and look at the study by Reverend Fetz, F-E-D-D-E-S, he's at the Theological Bible Seminary. He did an extensive study in the prison because he was not aware of this until he worked in the prisons. And he realized by 2030, over half, he said 65% of black males will be Muslims in this society. And no one is talking about it. There needs to be a national, indigenous, Islamic political framework in this society, in this country. And no one is talking about it. And that is a dangerous cocktail because most of the young black youth convert to Islam going to prison pipeline. And so just like he talked about, you invested in Afghanistan, you invested in Pakistan. We need these same tools in this society here. That's my statement. Thank you.
Why, I want you to address that, but what is it about Islam that young people are getting, those who grew up in Christian households, go to prison, convert to Islam? What is going on that you can speak of that is causing that shift? Is it something that the black churches are not doing, that the Islam religion is doing?
No, there's a major social innovation that black youth had. They always had it, especially with rap music, and they had their own cultural, I guess you could say, underground world. Islam has been about that underground world for years. If you look back at the history of many gangs, unfortunately, a lot of these systemic organic roots come from the Islamic premise. So this has been ignored for years in our cities. You go walk down any city, you see kufis, young people coming out, all walking, selling oils, and everybody's ignoring this. And our own power. So there is something systemic about Islam that the young people get. That they're not getting in the church. And unfortunately, especially the young men, that the city leaders haven't come up with a systemic, like I say, national city framework to address these issues. Okay, thank you.
Every year in October, and go back on our website, we do interfaith or multi-faith children's Sabbaths, and we work very closely with leaders of all the major denominations and faiths, including the Muslims. It is the most diverse denomination, it is the most diverse religious network in America. If you compare who is Islamic and who are Christians and who are Jews, but we have tried to maintain that dialogue. We have Muslim freedom schools in some places. They don't like to have the women teaching, but they don't have to get over that because we don't deal with all that. But I think it's something we need to recognize and we need to look at because increasingly the number of young people that we see coming in our networks are not Christian. And so we want to reach out and understand, and more importantly, be inclusive.
Just want to say that I'm really happy to be here. And my name is Danielle Jeter. I'm actually a youth commissioner on Marian Wright Youth Commission in Philadelphia. And I wanted to make a point that the youth are being heavily influenced by the music, by the media, and because the holistic family affair is not really that much in existence anymore, the children are learning their morals through the music. And I wanted to, ask, is there some type of way that we can censor media? Also, my second question is, from birth, you're expected to live by the American law as an American citizen, but law isn't taught in schools often. So, why is that? Thank you.
All right, real quick questions. First Amendment rights, let's talk about that.
I feel strongly about turning off the TV set. We've got to look, I can't bear to turn it. You try to get through 1 minute on television and you haven't seen a violent image or a sexually suggestive image, you can't do it. But we're consumers, we need to turn it off. I remember going to the grocery store a long time ago and some of the things we've done now, the billions of dollars that are spent on children as consumers. And my 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, was telling me about serious about it. I'm not sitting here arguing with a 3-year-old. Where are they getting these messages? The media sees children as a market. They market. I went to my local drugstore, CVS, and I was looking at the toy section, and there was something called insults. And I pulled this little thing, and it told you how to do insults. I took that toy up to the stand and put something in here to tell folk who are under 5 how to insult other folk. We've got to have some, the Christian right talks about all kinds of First Amendment contribution. We should just withdraw our patronage. We should turn off the TV set. We should absolutely deal with all these wild images and stop buying these video games. But that's going to take a community discussion, though.
All right.
That's going to take a community discussion.
Thanks, Jonathan. A long line here and right last time. We got a second question. Real quick. What's the second question?
Why isn't law being taught in school more if we're expected to live by it?
You want to address that with law being taught in school?
You're not teaching a lot of things in school.
Yeah, that's not true.
A lot of people
but that's a long discussion. You're not teaching history in school.
All right, thank you. Real good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your good service.
Thank you. My question. My name is Melissa Cornick, and I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, with Washington across for Delaware. There were 20,000 soldiers of color that actually marched in that war and fought in that war, and they were patriots. And I'm wondering if children understood that they have a real connection to American history, do you think that would make a small difference in their lives?
Amen, amen. And that's why the key to people being engaged in freedom schools is the books. And best Black and Latina folk pick these books and they learn about their history and and what little Ruby Bridges did, and they learn about the patriots in the American Revolutions. We need to. We've got to teach our children history. They're adults who don't seem to know what went on 40 years ago in the Civil Rights Movement. And our children are missing it at home, in our churches, and in our schools, and we need to correct that.
Thank you. Go ahead. All right, take the next question.
Hi, my name is Brianna Patterson, and I'm the Northeast Regional Director of the National Action Network Youth Move. And I wanted to know why you talked about portrayal of the youth in media. And I wanted to know why is it that when we call for positive youth are out there doing things, and we call for press, we can never get it. But they always want to. It doesn't sell newspapers.
You asked the gentleman to your left.
I knew that. Thank you, Congressman.
One of the problems we have is the media portrayal of everything. If you sit up and listen, the media tends to dignify some of the foolishness. When a crime is committed, and the reporters say, and the juvenile will be tried as an adult, inferring that that's being tough on crime, not stupid on crime. What was the last article you heard when they were voting on a bill that includes mandatory minimums? When have you heard that mandatory minimums have been studied and found to be discriminatory, do nothing to reduce crime, waste the taxpayers' money, and often violate common sense? But the buffoons in Congress have voted for them anyway. When have you heard that? Now you heard mandatory minimum sentence and like it's something serious. So what we need to, hopefully, I don't know what you can do about it, but we need the media to get serious about addressing juvenile crime. When they dignify all these slogans and sound bites, that's what the politicians, except the ones on this table, have been trying to explain why you shouldn't go in that direction. That's what you're going to get.
Just very quickly, I want to go back to young people who are doing the right thing, trying to get positive attention. So I've become pretty aggressive about this in Philadelphia, and I know Mayor Hancock does some things in Denver. So to counter that, we host a fair number of events in the mayor's reception room about young people. So whether it's the Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement, who our team, summer before last, won the national championship, we have a reception for them in the mayor's reception room. We had a young team win the Super Bowl of Pop Warner football. I had the Philadelphia Police Department meet them at Philly International Airport with a police escort. And the moment they left the airport property, that bus didn't stop until they arrived at their field in North Philadelphia, just like we would if the Eagles won the Super Bowl or the Phillies won the World Series or anything. So I basically kind of use the office and anything that goes with it. Pretty much if I'm having a press conference about something, somebody's going to show up. And if there's something going on with young people and I happen to be there and there's no press there, I call it out on it. I say, you're doing great things here. If 5 of y'all would just start a fight right now, we might be able to get some press out of it. But nobody's doing anything bad. You should be in the front page of the paper for doing the good stuff, just like there is every now and then when people do bad stuff. You have to call them.
The media, whether intentionally or unintentionally, do perpetuate violence among young people. They read the paper, they watch the news, that's where they get their bragging rights. That's a big thing for them to talk about. They were on the front page of the news. So either intentionally or unintentionally, they do contribute to violence.
Hi, my name is Dr. Chris Pennell, and I do preventive medicine at Johns Hopkins, and I'm a resident of New York. And I was wondering, specifically from the mayors and everyone else on the panel, what can we do to frame violence and violence prevention as a public health issue? We have a lot of focus on obesity, on diabetes, but violence, whether it's intimate partner violence, whether it's gun violence, gang violence, that is a public health issue. And what is your responsibility as elected officials to help shape that?
And that's what we've been talking about all along. Yesterday morning, Donna Christensen's Health Brain Trust started off with dealing with violence as a public health issue. And that's, and I mentioned at that forum, I mean, if we're dealing with AIDS, we're dealing with AIDS as a public health issue. If we're doing it like we do crime, we spend all our money building cemeteries. Nothing about prevention, early intervention, and that kind of thing. And so that's what we've been talking about, having an evidence-based model of dealing with crime, an evidence-based, longitudinal, prevent it before it happens perspective. If we would take that public health evidence-based model, you wouldn't have all this foolishness going on, the headlines and a conversation about crime that just deals on children killing children. At the end, after it's too late, the conversation would be how do you prevent it systemically? And as Marian Wright Edelman has said, you got to do it starting very early. And they usually say at birth. I'd say prenatal care is too late. Teen pregnancy prevention is when you really need to start.
Thank you.
I'm a 9th grade English teacher, and there was recently an article released about DC changing the achievement gap for students based on race and income.
I was wondering, as controversial as that is, do you think that by pushing African American students out of school because they now can graduate, that will help mitigate some violence?
You get some violence, no, you would transfer the people out of school. If you kick kids out of school, you're just transferring the problem, making it worse. The worst thing, one of the worst symptoms passes this thing called zero tolerance, where you get some technical violation and kids get kicked out of school, no services. I mean, they were behind when they started. By the time they get back, they're going to be behind or and on track to drop it out. I showed a chart that showed dropping out where that takes you. We need to make sure that instead of this zero tolerance foolishness, that we get serious about crime and deal with it not as a slogan or soundbite, and not deal in silos. Because if you're in the education silo and get kicked out of there, all you're going to do is just get into the criminal justice silo. You have to deal with it holistically.
TW from the state of Illinois. Since addressing youth violence is a policy issue for congressional leaders, public safety issue for law enforcement, and pulpit issue for pastors on your municipality level or county level, have you brought everybody in the room on a quarterly or monthly basis, and what was your results?
In Denver, we have an effort called GRID, which is a gang reduction initiative of Denver, but it also addresses the issue of youth violence. That's the idea. And then the idea is to coordinate all three levels of government, federal, state, and local, all major community stakeholders, including faith-based leaders, nonprofit organizations who are geared toward addressing the issue of youth violence, and all the other subsidiary issues. One of the things that you've heard throughout today is that we recognize that youth violence is a result of problems gone unaddressed or solved. Okay, so we are dealing with the symptoms when a kid is picking up a gun and firing at someone randomly or without transferring the consequences. One of the things I struggle with is what makes a young black boy pick up a gun, point it toward another young black boy who looks just like him, and without thinking about the consequences, pulling the trigger to take his life. That to me leads itself to much more mental, social, cultural, economic, familial challenges that we have not even gotten deep enough to deal with. And so to your point, all these various stakeholders are coming together to talk about how we can address these issues. The doctor stood up and said, this is a public health issue. Absolutely. It's framed in the public health framework, but it's also an economic issue. Once you think about the exponential cost of loss of life. When that doctor, that police officer in Denver fell to the bullet, her life ended. Her daughter is now without her mother. But that young man's life also ended that day. And he is a father of 2 young children. So you think about the exponential cost of that one act that now occurs. So I don't want to go much further, but the point is that we have pulled together under one initiative, everybody to work on these issues, and we're beginning to make progress.
It's called Philly Rising. I won't go into it. It's sounds so much Philly Rising. We brought a ton of agencies together in a more holistic fashion. It's not about a top-down piece. We have resources, communities have needs and ideas. Merge them together. I'm not coming here to tell you what to do. Come to say what we can offer. What do you think is best in this community? We've seen violence going down in those communities. Philly Rising is spreading all across the city of Philadelphia. To the doctor in the back, you have a counterpart almost in Philadelphia. Her name is Dr. Gina Garvin. She's a resident at the University of Pennsylvania. Violence prevention, we need to put you two together.
Okay, I just want to say in Pittsburgh, we have Pittsburgh Initiative to Reduce Crime, where we have all those people together working to address the problem. We learned a long time ago that you have to have collaboration, you have to have relationships in order to impact what's going on today.
Thank you. Hello, my name is William Leon Ward. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, but I live here in Maryland. Working here in the area, in the city, I'm hands-on in the streets with the young men and young people who are addressing the issues you're seeing in violence. I haven't been from a different culture, I guess within the culture, but I'm outside, also in the streets with them. What is there to do for those who are out there? Is there any training provided? Are there anything that's protect us outside? Because 9 times out of 10, a lot of times we get attacked by the violence, so we have to be a part of working with the young people in that violence and then we have to go back and say, well, do I still stay in this, knowing this happened to us, and we have to go to sleep at night and worry about the violence, or do we just give up on our children and just say, you'll make a life better for myself? So is there anything that you can provide for us, for people out on the street, if there's things that training we can provide to keep us out there, or do something that we can stay in the fight?
Arm them, and if you arm, we can get them.
I'd like to give a name and a telephone number of Roy Martin in Boston, who was a gangbanger and who shot up the church a long time ago. He's now kind of heading up the street efforts for the city of Boston. So let me give you some folk who are out there today who know how to function and know how to survive. So let me give you a name.
And many cities have, I think it's been mentioned here before, the ceasefire program, which is where they train folks, former gang members, former youth offenders, to go out the street and to stay in the fight, as you say. And I know it's big in Chicago. Marian, you have it in Philadelphia?
Yeah, we have it. One of our guys, Wiley Smith, is right there in the white shirt. You should talk to him.
Over here.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Scott. My name is John Wiley. I'm a counselor here in the D.C., originally from Michigan. And a product of CDF Free Schools and stuff. But my question is primarily for Representative Scott or the rest of the here. I wanted to know, is ammunition really ammunition protected under gun laws? Because as opposed to wasting more time on trying to get assault weapons off the streets, why not just try to tax the ammunition to the point where the gun is no good if you don't have any bullets to shoot?
A couple of years ago, somebody pointed out that we had about a 17-year supply of guns on the street and about 3 years worth of ammunition. I don't know where they got the numbers from, but the suggestion was that we, instead of gun control, if we did ammunition control, we'd be a lot better off. There's not, legislatively, there aren't many initiatives along those lines now, but taxing ammunition wouldn't be a bad idea.
Can I add this? We talked about Aurora. The Aurora shooter purchased to get his AK-47 and other assault weapons. He was loaded that night with several weapons, all legal, by the way. He had purchased 6,000 rounds of ammunition online. To Congressman Scott's point, if there was an early warning signal in line, whether you buy it online or in the store, where somebody walks in and orders 6,000 rounds of ammunition or anything close to it, just to notify the state, where the state troopers or state and law enforcement make contact and say, why are you buying 6,000 rounds of ammunition? There could have been a connection with a psychiatrist. Are you going to psychological care? Are you psychiatric care? Just some basic questions, which we could have begun to make some of the connections with this guy, maybe avoid the situation. But 6,000 rounds of ammunition should have raised the iris.
And just as an example, in another part of the federal government, the Treasury Department, if you withdraw, I mean, this is not an issue for me because I don't have anywhere near this much money, so I'll just give you an example. If you withdraw $10,001 in cash out of your bank account, your own money, you have to fill out a form to let the federal government know that you just took $10,001 out of your own bank account because they want to know that you just withdrew that amount of cash. But you don't have to do anything to buy all those bullets to do your thing or a weapon anywhere else. Your own money, you have to let them know that you just took that much cash out of the bank.
There is one ammunition-related thing, that is the size of a clip. When others mass shootings start, they have to stop, unload one clip and reload, and that's an opportunity to intervene. Some of these clips are getting much longer and hold much more ammunition than anybody ought to need. So limitation on clips might be is one of the gun control initiatives that hadn't gone very far.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me, Marian Wright.
Marian, that's one of the questions for you.
Mr. Marian, I used to live in Philadelphia at the time. I grew up in Philadelphia. My name is William Randolph Everett. I used to be in gang violence myself.
Why aren't you in Philly now?
I'm Washington, D.C. now, sir. I live here in Washington. It's my home now. police would come by always check on us, even when they follow us to school, make sure we were to school. If we wasn't to school, they'll always have us down for a suspect. And that suspect sometimes used to hurt us and put us in boom school or put us in juvenile detention. Now, I was thinking, since we have all the gang grounds, we should bring those police back and do more police in the area. And plus, again, they work with the families. If the families is corrupt or something or drinking, they can always get involved with the family and send them to where the drug and alcohol.
I mean, there certainly been some changes in policing over time. I have to say to you, I guess two things. There are certainly gangs in Philadelphia, but the overwhelming majority of shootings and homicides in Philadelphia generally are not gang related. It is just, you know, JoJo wants Junebug. You owe me money, stuck my Timbs, looked at my girl, stand on my corner, I saw you, I found you, I'm shooting you. And this is not a lot of organized activity. It is, and it's not tremendously random. All these folks know each other. The overwhelming majority of victims and perpetrators in Philadelphia all have records. It's the same group of 500–600 people that we spend all of our time and resources chasing them around on a regular basis. We spend 1/3 of the entire city budget on public safety for the same group of folks. All known to us, they're in, they're out, they're running around, and we're chasing them morning, noon, and night. It's all the same crew.
But the young brother had a good question. I mean, you ride around the cities across the country and we see young people standing on corners. Truant officers no longer exist, and we're police officers who are out there saying, all right, move this along, carry this along on a cheap ride. Can you address that in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh, we no longer have truant officers. If you look around the country, your police departments are cutting back, budgets are cutting back. We can't do a lot of the things that we would like to do, need to do, or used to do because of the situation with manpower. In Pittsburgh, we're almost to the point of just responding to 911 calls. If it wasn't for Chief Harper, we wouldn't have the youth programs that we have today, because at one time, for a 7-year period, we cut out all interaction, community outreach, youth programs. We cut it out because our numbers went down so low. We just had to respond to 911 calls. So there's issues why we don't have the truant officers that we used to have. I don't know if you have anything.
Actually, we do the rest of this question. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Chanel. I live in the city of Newark, New Jersey. I'm a parent of 5, so what we talked about here is personal for me because I see it every day. My question to you, I work for an advocacy organization as the Director of Community Outreach. So I'm out every day talking to folks, trying to encourage them to get involved, to be educated on what's going on in their communities and their local government. And the response that I get every time is that, well, our local government has failed us. Our school system has failed us. Our local police has failed us. If we discipline our kids, DCF or whatever child welfare system is brought into us. So there's such a huge sense of selflessness, loss of hope, and fear. If we get involved, then there could be repercussions to me from the local gangs. So how do you stay encouraged? And I guess this is a selfish question for me. How can I stay encouraged to keep encouraging folks to get involved when what they're saying is actually true?
You have to keep praying that you have the strength to go out and do what's right. Because even though there's a sense of hopelessness, you can't perpetuate that hopelessness. You have to be the one. If you just reach one kid, you just raise them up just a little bit, that's what you're here for. You have to continue, you have to find the strength. I find the strength in what I do through prayer. You know, I ask for that strength. And there's only one person that can give it to me.
You can't let the bad folks speak to them. I mean, there's more of us than there are everybody else.
We have time for the last 3 questions, and we're going to go right through this. Thank you very much for staying over time.
Okay, hi, my name is Kimberly Williams. And my second question, the first one I'll address is Timothy, but the second question is not only to the panel, but to everyone that's in the room. As a parent of Brianna, I I want to know why we get dressed up. We come over here every year talking about the issue of violence in our youth. Why are none of our youth here with you? Why don't we take them out of this facility and bring them here to discuss the policies, to see how laws were made and what to do to address the issues?
I know I've seen youth all throughout the caucus. There were some in here earlier, but I understand what you. There's a group sitting there.
Right back here.
But all through the caucus, I've seen young people, because we know they need to be at the table, so they are not excluded by no stretch of the imagination.
Hi, I have a question concerning the blue code of silence. When you're dealing with violence, a lot of children teenagers, they don't want to talk to the police officers because they don't like to snitch. But there's also an issue with having informants that may not be telling the truth in the first place. So I'm wondering what is being done with that, because someone can be illegally convicted because someone is lying on the person. So how in the world do you take care of telling people that they can talk to you as far as youth violence when they don't even trust you? So I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, the way that we have to do it, we have to keep on doing it, is just showing young people that we're trying to do the right thing, building a relationship with them. There's always going to be people who lie on other people for whatever reason. We have to work with the system that we have, the criminal justice system that we have, and we have to do our due diligence as police officers to find the truth in whoever's telling it. You know, it's not easy to do, but we just have to keep trying.
The trust has got to be earned every day. It's by policies, it's by programs, it's by interaction. But there are serious trust issues in the community, and we try to make sure that Police Commissioner Ramsey admonishes, encourages strongly the officers. Treat people out in the street the way you want your family treated.
All right, next.
My name is Charles Taylor from Los Angeles. I'm wondering what, as mayors, or even federal, you're telling your state leaders and federal leaders in terms of resources that you need to help combat these issues you're dealing with regards to gang violence. And everyone's complaining about budgets. The Tea Party's always saying you have to cut, cut, cut. I'm just wondering what you're saying to your leaders.
I don't think that, one, we couch it in terms, at least I don't couch it in terms of youth violence. Again, we go back to the point that this has got to be a comprehensive approach to children. And one thing I believe I have the greatest impact on with regards to our young people is on the other side of that school door. Is getting them from their front door to the school door, safe, nutritionally, with health care, quality health care, and that we are doing the things necessary on the street with police officers and other intervention programs and prevention programs to keep them safe. And to carry that same kind of thinking forward with regards to our congressional members and our state legislators. Mayor Nutter started this conversation with this. And I'm going to say that a gang activist, or someone who works with, he's a former gang member, now works with gang members on our streets, very effective young man, sat in my office after the shooting of our officer and said, we don't put enough resources on the street to prevent young people from being involved. And the reality, if you step back and think about it, everything we do is bent on keeping it. We've got 30, 40 rec centers, pools, we got library, we got everything after school programs geared toward keeping kids out of this stuff. So we're putting a lot of resources in. Now we need to partner with the community I think a little more closely to make sure kids are engaging and utilize those services for themselves.
Both Congressman Scott and Marian Wright Edelman started this conversation talking about resources and how we utilize them. And I mean, the big message is, one, please stop the cuts. We know this is tough economic times, but two, pay attention to what you're cutting and its ultimate impact. I mean, some of this stuff is not only makes no sense, it's counterintuitive and will end up costing us more. I think many members of Congress, and you mentioned the Tea Party in particular, you got a group of folks who ran for office and hate government. I mean, what's the deal? So, I mean, we need to be responsive. We're in the tail end of a recession, all that other kind of stuff. That's all real. But you cannot just cut your way out of this. And many of those members, I think, don't understand the consequences of their actions, don't even know what the programs are and how they utilize on the ground to provide the kind of support services that our young people and others so desperately need. So part of it is, I know Congressman Scott needs help and support in the Congress to fight off some of the crazy ideas that come forward that ultimately negatively affect us in cities all across America.
Congressman Scott, last word.
One of the things that President Clinton mentioned at the National Democratic Convention was the word arithmetic. When you start talking about reduce the size of government, this is what you're talking about. And if you look at the size of the cuts that they're talking about, you can't cut that much out of budget without whacking education and health care and social services and mental health and access to college, the kinds of things that young people need to get the continuum of services they need to get into a cradle to college and cradle to career pipeline, and out of Marian's Wright Edelman's cradle to prison pipeline. It's actually cheaper to create a cradle to college and career pipeline than it is to maintain this over-incarceration. But when you hear people running on, I'm going to cut your taxes and reduce the size of government with unspecified cuts, before you get to agreeing with anybody, ask them what the cuts are going to be. And invariably, you're going to find a lot of things that you like, especially the kinds of things that are long-term prevention and early intervention. And when you start cutting, prevention and early intervention are not crisis. You need to do the things that you got to do right now, the crisis kind of things. Prevention and early intervention can wait till next week. Scientific research and all that, but I can wait till next week. Everything can wait until next week comes. Then you look up what happened to the Head Start money, what happened to the after-school money. And then why are our children joining gangs? Because they made a rational choice, nothing else out here to do. That's how we can find some love and affection and guidance. Nothing else going on. And these are people, like I said, what kind of society do we have when joining a gang is the best choice a young person has? We can do better than that. And we will reduce crime and save money.
Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you, audience, for your questions and your patience. Thank you, panelists, everyone. Thank you.
Let's give a hand to our excellent moderator, Mrs. Alexander.